Welcome to another episode of Live Stream Insiders. My name is Peter Stewart, and together with Krishna today, we are the Live Stream Insiders team. And welcome to episode 92. There goes the bell, and here comes the clock, which starts our 30-minute or thereabouts countdown, because what we say is we give you the last 7 days of live streaming news in the next 30 minutes. And first of all, before I give you a bit of a rundown of what's in the programme, another warm welcome to co-host and tech guru for Live Stream Insiders, and to be quite honest, lots of other stuff as well. Here's Krishna Day. Hi, Krishna.
I said this week, Peter, it's great to be back. The fact that we're actually going to be able to share something that you've been up to this week. Let's say your feet were not on the ground. Got that at the end of the show. So hang on in if you want to see what Peter's been doing and how high up was he.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And I should say, if my side of the programme looks a little bit different, I've had problems technically my end, so I'm actually joining you from my iPhone this week. And over the next 29 minutes or so, we're going to be talking about live streaming with virtual reality, because something new is coming to Facebook Live. So I'll be telling you about that. Also, LinkedIn is beginning to offer video as well. Not live video, although maybe that's a little bit further down the line. But we thought because it's video, because it's LinkedIn, it's something that you're going to be particularly interested in. Also, an underwater adventure with Periscope. So a Periscope almost being literally a periscope, so a fantastic case study that we're going to be bringing you as well. Also, Hashtag Sports has been running a conference over the last week with various different things, all to do with social media, but some of their top tips when it comes to live video as well, which Krishna will be coming up with a little bit later. And also, if you're a community journalist or a professional journalist or maybe a freelance journalist, you may have heard of the fantastic source and app called Verifeye Media. Well, they've started some free live stream training, and we'll tell you about why they've decided to do that a little bit later on as well. And also, we're going to be talking to you about the app which streamed live to 182 destinations. You know what? My brain is starting to hurt. One live stream to nearly 200 destinations at the same time. Okay, all that and maybe a little bit more if we got time over the next 27 minutes or so with episode 92 of Live Stream Insiders. But first of all, let's take you back to an app which was launched, well, actually last April in beta. So it's not all singing or dancing at the moment, but it was actually launched by Facebook, as I say, a couple of 3 months ago, Facebook Spaces. So I don't know whether you've come across that yet or whether you've had a chance to play around. It's a VR app for Oculus Rift, and now you can share your live video on Facebook via Facebook Spaces, and it gives an opportunity for you to share what you're doing in a virtual reality world with other people who can watch at the same time. So a whole new kind of experience for people who are watching. So maybe exotic locations and 360, or you can collaborate, or you can do some viral video and people can watch you in real time on Facebook. And they can also comment as well, ask you questions. You can see their reaction in VR too, and all of those comments, which is a great way to kind of interact with people. Now, I must admit, Krishna, that I haven't actually tried it myself, because I don't actually have one of these expensive cameras, because they're around about $400 at the moment, but it does really sound really intriguing. How's it going to work? Well, Facebook themselves say they don't actually know. Quote, "We're excited to see how people go live from spaces to interact with friends in new ways." So they're not entirely sure at the moment, but they're suggesting maybe some virtual reality talk shows and stream those to your friends and family and followers. But the key thing is that you don't need any special equipment to be able to tune in and watch. So you can just watch with your basic mobile phone or your desktop browser. You don't need any other gizmos yourself. It's just the person, as I understand it, who is streaming, who uses the Oculus Rift technology and does so via Facebook spaces, and they can draw with virtual markers, and they can have video calls via Messenger and so on. So obviously the audience is still pretty small at the moment. Not many people actually own Oculus Rift VR headsets, but they reckon that it's going to be really, really interesting to see how it's used, how people are going to be integrating with it. And of course, as far as Facebook goes, the more people that use it, try it out in beta, they say they're going to add many more features to it over the forthcoming weeks, months and years. The more people that use it, and the more people watch it just with a basic mobile phone or desktop, it's spreading the word, isn't it? And it is selling more units and getting people more interested in virtual reality. Krishna, I don't know whether you had a chance to see the video that was linked with this that Facebook put out in the week. And it really is quite mind-boggling. I'm not particularly into VR, not because I don't want to be, but just because I haven't had that exposure to it. I've had a little bit of exposure at things like the MojoCon conference that you and I have been to over the last several years. But wow, boy, oh boy, my head is starting to hurt at the possibilities that what this may be able to do. And it really is really, really intriguing stuff.
Yeah, you know what? It reminded me, though, in some ways, of how rubbish I was in Second Life. I don't know if
Oh,
anybody else was rubbish, but I was just absolutely rubbish. I'm thinking, okay, am I going to be any better in VR? I couldn't fly on Second Life. Of course, things have come on a lot since then. And my kids are very adept in terms of being able to use virtual reality. I mean, even some way back in terms of tools that have been around. It's really interesting. I actually also saw that there's going to be potentially a lower cost camera as well, sorry, a VR headset as well um, in 2018, because as you said, it's a little way out of most people's pocket. And also, I understand, and maybe somebody who's watching live today, because I know we've got some very techie people who join us here live or on the replay. But I know here live that some of you might know, I think you also have to have a specific PC to be able to run with it as well. So it's not just the headset you have to invest in. I did see a really interesting example of somebody testing it out, and it's somebody who's well known in the world of live video, and that's Joel Comm. So if you actually look at the Live Stream Insiders page, from memory, I think I've posted it there, or you'll find it on his stream of content. And so it was great to see him actually create his avatar with his glasses and so on, and then demonstrate it. And he's great at doing things like that. I really would love to get my hands on understanding how it's working, because I haven't tested that out for live like yourself, and I don't actually know. So if anybody's here and knows me, and you know where I am, let me know how we can meet up, and I'd love to just learn about how you're doing it. But I think it's going to be interesting. But as I say, my fear is I'll be as rubbish at this as I was on Second Life, and I was really not very good on Second Life at all.
okay.
Talking about second, sorry, Peter.
I'm going to be back in a few moments' time talking about that underwater live stream. More than a live stream, it's a live ocean, let alone a stream. I'm going to be back in a few moments' time. But first of all, back to Krishna.
Thanks everybody for joining us here live. If you're not familiar with Live Stream Insiders, Peter, who's here with me, as you see him on screen now, I myself are here every week for 30 minutes or so, talking about the latest live stream tools, technologies, case studies, and also tools that you can actually use in your organization. So it doesn't matter if you're using live video or thinking about live video for marketing, for communications, for social selling, for crisis management, for internal communications. That's the kind of stories we cover, and also tips. And again, just something that you may not be aware of is that actually I've got a job on my hands for the next week and a bit, because I actually have got a book to review. What book is that? Oh. Well, it's only Peter's. So his publisher has sent me the manuscript to actually review, and thank you, Peter, for the opportunity to do that. So I hope to get that done in the next couple of weeks for you. Anyway, enough about that. I mentioned social selling, and I know lots of you might be using the platform of LinkedIn. So at the top of the show, Peter talked about this in terms of video. It isn't live video, but I do anticipate that it will come out in terms of with live video streaming. So what's happening over on LinkedIn? Let me just quickly share with you a picture here. And thank you to all of you here in terms of watching live, and also all of you on replay. If you are on LinkedIn and you want to connect, feel free with the people who are watching here live, put your LinkedIn URL into the chat now, and we'll look to reach out to you and connect. And you can certainly find me on LinkedIn. Krishna Day is where I try to use it in terms of my profile everywhere. So what you're going to see now when you go into LinkedIn, and this is on that app. So remember, we talk about live video and live audio on mobile, also on desktop. This happens to be on mobile. Now, I haven't seen anybody say that they've had this only accessible on iOS or Android yet. And I haven't seen this. I don't have access to this at the minute, but what you're seeing on your screen is what you will see at the top of your feed. So when you can post an update, you can post a photograph. Well, now you're going to have the opportunity to post a video. That video could be something from your camera roll, and it could also be something that you actually record live. Now, again, you record it live, but it won't stream live. So that's the key thing. In terms of the recording of that content live, I've seen people do that both in portrait, and when they've done it in portrait, it seems to come out as a square with the vertical video in the middle. And in this example that you see here, I actually did it on my phone. I was looking at somebody who I know had access to this, and you can see it was filling up the whole of my phone there. So really interesting, like we're seeing in terms of that filling of the platform in terms of whatever you're on. We talked about that last week in terms of changes that YouTube are making with their mobile app to be able to see that. But typically when I've seen other content, I've looked at it on desktop, and if it's been landscape, then it's come out as landscape. But as you see, that's just an example on my phone of somebody actually who posted that video. So a couple of other things to note. And there was an article that I saw on Inc., which probably has got the most detail about it at the minute. But again, because I haven't seen it, and I haven't seen an article from LinkedIn about it, and I haven't seen screenshots about this, they're talking in here about analytics. So I guess that one thing to watch out for if you've got access to it is take a look at what analytics you're going to be able to see there. So they're saying content creators will be able to see things like views, shares, likes, comments, and also see data about the people who have viewed their videos, where they work, their job title, and obviously the top markets where the video has also been viewed. So I'm interested in terms of what we're going to be able to see there in terms of analytics, because that's going to be intriguing, I think, for all of us in terms of who's paying attention to our content. Is our content reaching those people? I'll be also interested to see what happens in terms of live video for pages. So nobody's talked about that, or recorded video for pages, because at the minute, people like myself can just share a link to YouTube video or a Vimeo video, and I can do that on my page. I can do that on my profile. I'll be interested to see, can I upload native video directly to LinkedIn on my page? I'll also be interested to see what happens there in terms of advertising. So will there be opportunities for us to be able to then put ads around video that we upload, let's say, in terms of on profiles and so on? But everybody's after video, and it's been a long time coming. It's really great to see that LinkedIn is doing that. What this says to me, though, is for those of us who have actually been thinking about using video, and it's just a short piece of video you can do. The ones I've seen other people do have been less than a minute. The article on Inc. says that we'll be able to upload 10 minutes of native video. 10 minutes is a long piece of content in terms of on a social network. And it'll be interesting to see what video gets traction, what kind of video gets traction there. The thing that I'm also interested in, though, in terms of on LinkedIn, is what video then surfaces, and actually what happens to our newsfeed. Does our newsfeed on LinkedIn become different as well, as we've seen on Facebook? And particularly in terms of LinkedIn, the thing I'm noticing is the videos I'm seeing so far, we need to improve our video skills. So perhaps this is something that, you can't do privately. I don't know yet, because I haven't tried it on LinkedIn. And let me know if you have yourself, and I'll check the comments in a moment. And maybe, Peter, you might be able to see the comments as well. But what I don't know is, can you send that video that you upload or create on LinkedIn just to specific people? And can we do that privately? Because otherwise, I'd be suggesting use other tools to be able to test out your capabilities on video. Some of the video I've seen on LinkedIn so far, uploaded natively, has been very shaky, and the comments that people have been getting, much as they're excited about this new feature, they're getting comments saying, hold your camera still. Yeah, or look at the screen. Somebody else was sharing a video and you didn't see them at all and they didn't put a context around it. It's, for me, get back to basics. So be excited. Yes, it could be great. Take care that you don't see if we aren't just using video on LinkedIn just to pitch and to sell. There is a time and a place to do that, but it'll be interesting to see how it matures and how much of the newsfeed on LinkedIn now then starts to actually roll out with video. What I understand is that about 500 people who've got access to this feature at the minute, which is very, very small, but I understand it's rolling out to the rest of us. So like most other platforms here in Europe, we have FOMO. I had FOMO for some features on Facebook. I tried it once or twice and I haven't been back again. I'm sure I'll have FOMO now for fear of missing out of what's happening on LinkedIn. I'm excited to try it. I'm excited to hear from you. So do let us know if you've got access to this and what your thoughts are in terms of using video on LinkedIn. As I said, it's not live. I'm sure that will come. But the key thing for me is, particularly, I know that your executives, your C-level executives, maybe your CEOs if you're in larger organizations, are using LinkedIn themselves. This is the time to get them prepared. This is the time to think about what your content's going to be. This is the time to get yourself camera ready. And we've given you lots of tips on that in past episodes, which you can go back and find in our archives. So that's it from me in terms of on that story about LinkedIn, but interested to know in terms of what you're finding. So remember what I said, if you're on LinkedIn and you want to share with us your URL for people here to connect with, feel free to do that and do let us know and share with us an example or two if you've been actually got that access to LinkedIn and either that native video uploading or actually creating it directly on the app. And if you've heard about whether it's just iOS or Android, as I said, nobody's talked about that to me at all at this point in time. So I'm interested to, is it rolling out on one particular platform or the other? We'd love to know more. And I'm sure we're going to be talking about more of LinkedIn and video in the months to come.
Absolutely. Carlos and Neil and Ruth and Patricia and other people who are watching as well. Thank you so much indeed for taking part in Live Stream Insiders episode 92. We always like to bring you some case studies as well. And here's someone that Krishna and I have known from the very, very early days of Periscope, and that is Mitch Oates, who is in Australia, and he's been a fantastic exponent of Periscope particularly, and has really kind of pushed the boundaries of what that particular app can do with live streaming from extreme locations, not just drones, which he has been doing, but also out in the sea, surfing and underwater as well. In fact, he was kind enough to contribute a screenshot to the forthcoming book, the live streaming handbook, out in December, and of one of his underwater periscopes that he did. And he's been doing some more with Periscope, specifically backed up by Periscope, and also the tourist board as well, Tourism and Events Queensland, Australia, over the course of the past week. And it was a live reef dive on the Great Barrier Reef, which was really, really intriguing. Some superb pictures, great connection as well that he managed to get. And well, all I've really got to say is to quote the Twitter Australia head, Susie Nicoletti, who said, "Twitter has an incredible way of breaking down barriers to participation and of creating connections between people and places. For this project, the Periscope broadcast becomes a literal underwater periscope to connect our audience to a truly exotic place. The Great Barrier Reef adventure is just one small way to raise awareness of the reef around the world and inspire everyone, no matter where they are, to preserve this site for future generations to enjoy." Really great clarity, really great pictures, really great event, and a really great cause as well. Just one thing I would pick up on slightly, if I'm being really picky, as Susie Nicoletti said, Periscope becomes a literal underwater periscope. I'm not entirely sure that it did actually become a literal underwater periscope, because I think that's kind of going the other way, but I get her analogy. fantastic really to see live streaming really pushing the boundaries, doing something a little bit different, and showing people things that they can't normally see for themselves. I've had the fortunate adventure opportunity to go to the Great Barrier Reef and do a little bit of diving there, which was absolutely fantastic. But of course, the big thing about live streaming is to show people behind the scenes, or to show people things that they wouldn't normally have the opportunity to see for themselves. So that was a really great example of that, I thought. So congratulations to Mitch Oates, and you'll be able to read a bit more about him when the live streaming handbook is out from December.
So one of the things that we've talked about over the 2 years almost that we've been together for Live Stream Insiders is a lot of examples of how live video is used for sports. And some of you may or may not know that I actually have done, I know this sounds surprising, I've done a lot of work in the area of sports over the last, oh gosh, I can't even remember how many years. So some of my clients have actually been organizations where the content has been televised. And one of the things that I've been working with them on is about how they might use other forms of media, including live video. So it was really interesting to see the outcomes of an event. So somebody had written up the outcomes of an event, all about #sports, an event that was actually taking place. Now, we'll, as usual, put the links available for you to check out. We're just going to pick up one particular element of it. And it's about the National Hockey League. And let me just share with you this image here, just to put it into context. Now, we talked about this in 2016, about how they actually were going to use, this is in the US, how they were going to use Twitter live video and collaborate with them in terms of that being announced last year. And there was a whole number of other organizations doing so at the time. So my point in terms of on this story is those of you who are working with organizations who already have broadcast rights in terms of in place. So some things that you're doing, you may not have the ability to actually then share everything because of the fact that actually you've got media rights have been sold to broadcasters in your country or wherever it might be. And therefore, how on earth could you use live video? So it was really interesting to see that the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer of the NHL, Heidi Browning, was commented to say about 3 things. And this is something that you might consider if you're working in the area of sports and broadcast media for your sports events, but you're thinking about what can we do live for. So here's the first thing. One of the things they said is the first way that we use live is to drive people to watch linear broadcasts of the game. Our broadcast partners are important sources of revenue for us, and we want to make sure the live strategies are not taking away from the broadcast, but it's actually additive to it. So how can you use live video to actually tell people to go and watch and what's coming up? What can you show perhaps behind the scenes? What can you show of the grounds that actually is going to be of no interest to actually the broadcast media? What could you do to actually drive people to watch a replay? Because a lot of that broadcast media people can watch in terms of on demand. So that's one thing. The second idea for you from Heidi is the second way we use live is to expand our audience. We're streaming live on Twitter to find out more about people about who may never tune in on TV, and we're streaming live in China through Tencent in order to help grow our Chinese audience. So that's interesting. Could you use live to help reach a geographic audience you don't actually get to at the minute? Or if I think about young people, let's say not maybe under 25s, many of them are watching no TV at all. And they're actually watching everything in terms of on their mobile device or on their computers. And so that's the choice that they've had. So could live help you reach those people? We know that live is huge, huge, huge in sports. And so that might be a way that you could look at it. The third way that the NHL are using it is to bring the fans closer to the players. With NHL players, there's such a challenge because they always have gear on and they're always on and off the ice so fast. Because it's hard to see them, live allows us to give fans a one-to-one experience that they can't get anywhere else. I thought it was really 3 interesting insights in terms of how the NHL are using live video, and perhaps it could give you some ideas about what you might do. Perhaps you're working with Little League. you know. And obviously there's other complications you got to think about there, where you're working with young people. You've got to make sure you've got the permission, as you do with anything, to be able to actually get them on camera. And more so in terms of when you're working with young people, you've got to get their guardians, their parents, to sign off on that. I know a lot of people who actually use live video in terms of actually with young people in terms of sports. One of the products we've talked about here, and a company that I personally love, is actually all came about in terms of the iographer came about because of the work that Dave Basulto was doing in terms of coaching kids in terms of in sports. And that was the origins of his wonderful different products that he's got to actually help you frame and keep steady your devices. So perhaps that's the area that you want to work with. I actually have got, my kids are all swimmers and they're all in a swimming club. We've got some very strict guidelines about what you can and can't show there. So swimming is not always appropriate, but we have done some live video in terms of when they've done things like sea swimming and they've not been close up. And I've done some 360 video as well. So again, those 3 ideas from the NHL, I hope that gives you some ideas for the work you're doing if you're working either with let's say you've got GAA clubs for those of you in Ireland, or school clubs, or in fact in terms of you're working where you're broadcasting and you've got broadcasting rights in place. I hope that you found that little story of interest.
Absolutely, Krishna, thank you for that. And Krishna will be back in a few moments' time. Also still to come, why Britain's most popular newspaper is getting behind live streaming, not for itself, but for its readers. An interesting thought there in a few moments' time. First of all, I don't know whether you're aware of Verifeye Media. That's Verifeye, as in your eye. Verify, clever stuff. Verifeye Media. It's where citizen journalists can sign up and be verified, and then they can send video or stills from a news situation straight up to that company. It's all branded then, and then the company itself will sell that video or that still image to news organisations on your behalf. Yes, they take a cut, but as far as you're concerned, it means that you're okay in the field. You don't have to start negotiations with anyone. And also, as far as the news organisation is concerned, they know that you are a verified journalist or community journalist. It works all around the world, and it's actually run and been set up by a guy that Krishna and I are very great friends with, John D. McHugh. You can find him on Twitter, of course, John D. McHugh. In fact, he does hail from Ireland, and he's actually based in London now. And his background is as a war reporter, as a war journalist. So he really knows what he's doing. Why am I telling you all this? Well, now Verifeye Media are saying not only will we sell your still and video images, your recorded images for you, but also we're going to be doing some live streaming from news organisation or from news situations as well. So what they've decided to do is set up a new live streaming training program for contributors, and they're actually going to be, really interestingly, commissioning stories from their contributors as part of Verifeye Media. So they want to build a core group of contributors for Verifeye Media who they can commission on behalf of their clients to go out and stream stories for them. Because as we know, very often news organisations don't necessarily have the time or the reporters or the access or indeed the expertise or the equipment to go to a news situation and start doing live streaming. So that could be a breaking news event, or it could be what we call an evergreen feature, which is just a kind of fun thing to do, and they can set you up to do that maybe next Tuesday or in 3 Tuesdays time. It could be sometime in the future. It doesn't necessarily matter. And they say they believe that no other news organisation has actually, quote, come close to scratching the surface of what is possible when it comes to news gathering using live streaming. They say there is a veritable plethora of live broadcasts, but there's currently a dearth of genuinely engaging news content to view. And they say that combination of a huge audience but a lack of high quality content, they say presents a huge opportunity for freelance journalists with the right skills. You know what? I think that is a really interesting thing that they've spotted there, a bit of a gap in the market. So they're going to be doing some training for journalists. This is how you live stream, and then they're going to act as a go-between between those trained journalists who can do that from the field and the companies that want live streamed content. Maybe it could be that you see an opportunity with that particular model. Maybe you need to get on with Verifeye Media and maybe sign up, probably not to that course, but maybe you can prove that you know about live streaming, and then you can be commissioned to do some of those programs for that particular company. Nothing is coming back to me. Yes, we know John D. McHugh, and also we know Verifeye Media, but it seems to me it's too good an opportunity for you to miss if you're an expert in live streaming, which you probably are.
We've got lots of people who are authorities on live video who join us every week, and we really appreciate that. We also know there's lots of you who've not yet got started. But one of the things that I noticed, and thank you so much, Ruth, who joins us very regularly. Sometimes she watches the replay. Great to have you, Ruth, with us here in real time. But perhaps, Ruth, you want to share some links as well, because we were talking about sports before, and Ruth was saying that she produces a weekly sports news and commentary show, and she actually has used live mobile video to capture NBA pre-game warm-ups. So, Ruth, make sure there's a link there if you want people to have a look at your replays or something that's coming up, because that ties in really nicely in terms of what we were sharing before in terms of using live video for sports. Okay, so we just want to wrap up with a few little examples. I'm actually going to bundle a few things here together, some quick things from me, but I actually want to tell you something that our own Peter Stewart has been up to this week as well. So my quick little roundup for you here are two things that you can look at yourself. One of them, you'll find a link over on my Twitter account that I shared it to, and it links back to a blog article from Twitter. It's interesting because they've done a mid-year review of what's been going on Twitter. And my comment, I think, when I shared it, was the fact that actually there was quite a lot of live video content that they had there. Many of the things that we've talked about. So everything from the UK in terms of the election, they had the concert that we talked about, One Love concert in Manchester, and lots of other live streams that were also taking place there. So it's interesting in terms of their mid-year review of what's been happening, things that have caught their attention. They put a nice animated piece of content together there. It's on their Twitter account from the Twitter UK team, but there's a little article with that same content embedded. So if you're looking for inspiration and ideas, that just might be something to bookmark. And the other thing, we've actually talked about Harley Davidson in the past as well. So here's another quick one for you to look at. And in this particular case, it's actually, Peter talked about this earlier on in the show, about the fact of this is Switchboard Live. So the stream here was actually done with Switchboard Live, and they shared it. And as they said, they've actually been using Switchboard Cloud to 182 destinations, and 177 of them being Facebook pages. All I could think about is, boy, how do you manage the comments and all the interaction that you get? But you might want to take a look at that, because Harley Davidson, I remember them doing a stream a little while back, must be probably almost 2 years ago. I think of memory, it may have been on Periscope at the time, where they actually did a handoff between one country and another. So you actually could see them actually going to different locations around the world and actually doing a Harley Davidson journey when they had a new model that they were releasing. And I remember that going through many different nations. So anyway, quite innovative as an organization there. The last thing I want to talk about personally, and before I hand it back to Peter to wrap up the show with a few tips he's got, is something that Peter's been up to. Well, I know we don't often tell you about what Peter does. Sometimes I'll wangle it out of him as like, what's he been doing and how much he's been creating. But this one caught my attention this week. And Peter, as you know, works for the BBC, and he creates content for them. And that could be video content, it could be live video content. And in this particular case, there was another fire. This probably hasn't had as much coverage as the tower block that actually burnt down. But this is a fire that took place at a hospital. Now, nobody was hurt, but Weybridge Hospital is in Surrey. And in fact, there was an article which, again, I shared over on Livestream Insiders about the background to what had happened earlier on this week. Real absolute devastation. And in fact, Peter was quoted there because he's a local reporter for that area. But the thing that he's been up to, he's been up in the air. And we should ask him a couple of questions about this in just a minute. But let me just share with you this. This is just a screenshot. He was up in the air, and in fact, I think probably the tallest kind of ladder that there is that the fire brigade has. There's a whole big issue around kind of fires taking place and access to the right resources. And in this particular case, Peter went up high off the ground, and he's filming this live with his mobile device. And actually, we got to learn a little bit about the devastation. We learned a little bit about the role that the fire crew were doing. And this is a couple of days after the event. Peter's live stream was the first one on the scene to be able to do this. And, because of the fire, it was still smoldering along. And the reason that they were actually doing this live stream was the reason that they were up doing this, and obviously Peter had the opportunity to do the live stream, was that they still had hotspots, so obviously that could still catch light again. I'm really interested, Peter, in terms of what the experience was like, but it did get me to think about there is a time and a place that mobile is relevant. And could you imagine trying to take a fire crew up there to do their job, plus take a camera crew and a sound person and whatever else you might need and all the other power that you need, versus Peter has done this from his mobile device. It got a huge amount of traction. Obviously, people are really interested in what happened in that area. It's a devastation. There's surgeries that have been affected. So there's, drop-in centers that people go in for treatment, for medical treatment. And obviously, so the community has been affected. So Peter, tell us a little bit. I know we've gone over today, but I think it's worthwhile because you've probably got some interesting insights about I've got a couple of questions for you, and I'm going to roll them together. One was, it made me think about what was the benefit of using mobile? But the second thing was, because you were there with the phone, do you think it made a difference in terms of how the fire crew talked to you? Did they almost forget that you worked for the BBC? And did that lead to anything else that you might need to be aware of, because it could get them into sticky trouble? Or actually, was it more interesting in terms of the kind of content or the things that they could talk to you about, because you didn't have this big BBC frame in front of you and you didn't have a big camera and they could get on and do their jobs? I guess it might have been a tight squeeze. I don't know. I mean, I know the space that they have to be able to do their job is obviously the premium, and your reporting you wouldn't want that to get in the way of it. So they're my two questions. But if you've got questions for Peter, put them in the comments and we'll check out for them.
Yes, so this is the highest aerial ladder platform in the whole of the UK, and wherever you're watching around the world, you're probably aware of the tower block fire, which happened in London just over a month ago. Well, London doesn't have an aerial ladder platform this height, so they had to borrow it from where I am, and that's what went in. And I had the opportunity to go up in the country's tallest ladder platform, together with the crew who were also with that platform at the Grenfell Tower disaster. So they were really, really experienced. And obviously that helped with the risk assessment that I had to complete for my employers, for the BBC, to explain how to justify that I was going to be able to go up there without any risk or injury to myself or indeed to other people. What was particularly interesting, picking up on what Krishna said, was two different events that I went to this week. First of all, we'll compare them. First of all, this fire, I was 37 meters up in the air. I could have gone to 45. It was getting a little bit windy, and I was getting, it has to be said, a little bit jittery. I'd not been up in an aerial ladder platform before, so got up to 37 meters, and a terrific bird's eye view. It kind of goes back to what I was saying a little bit earlier on about giving viewers something a little bit different. Who wouldn't want to see inside that totally destroyed building? No one was hurt, incidentally, because it wasn't an overnight, it wasn't a stay hospital, but it was a huge medical centre of 3 floors, X-ray, physiotherapy, 2 GP centres. It had offices in there for the local part of the NHS, and it had all sorts of things. totally destroyed, please do see the video at facebook.com/BBC Surrey, SURREY. The stats, incidentally, nearly 100,000 views in the last 4 days, which for us, our little bit of the BBC, is absolutely incredible. So if you can add to that, I'll be really grateful. Facebook.com/BBC Surrey, SURREY, and it's pinned to the top there. Do I think that the firefighters spoke much more informally? Yes, I do. There wasn't much room there, and I think to have had a great huge camera on my shoulder, first of all, may have made them a little bit more reticent to allow me up because of the portability, because of the accessibility, because I wouldn't have been able to have moved around so much. Just having a phone with a clamp, which was strapped to my wrist for safety reasons, then that made things much more easy to be able to persuade them that I could get up. Now, perhaps they spoke, as I say, much more informally. Compare that to, I was at the launch, bizarrely, this is how the life of a journalist goes. A couple of days later, I was at the launch of a new rose at a historic property run by the National Trust. And I was trying to do some filming there. And you know what? People kept walking behind the frame. And sometimes you want that, but in this particular situation, I didn't. They kept walking in front. They kept talking to the guest while I was trying to interview them. It wasn't live, but it was pre-recorded. And the guest said to me, because he had a media background, he said, you know what it is? They don't realise, because you've just got a phone, that this is actually being recorded. And that's it. I think we've got two sides of the same coin. Yes, just using a mobile phone for live streaming or for pre-recorded video, it can mean that people are more talking much more informally. They're much more engaging, perhaps. They're less scared because you're just using a phone. But it may mean that other people just see you using a phone and they don't realise what you're doing at all. And then they interrupt the whole recording or live streaming process. So I think that was something that I did learn over the course of the past week. But if you do have a couple of minutes, if you can spend, 3, 4, 5 seconds at least just to add to those views, I'll be really grateful. But a terrific experience for me. It's been used as an example across the BBC of what can be done with live streaming. So hopefully I've been able to add that to the experiences, to the examples of what people can do when they're out in the field in a situation such as mine.
So Peter, I think that's it for the show this week in terms of all the stories we've got. Do you want to just wrap up and tell people how they can find us in terms of what we're going to be covering? And really, we appreciate you all being here. Thanks for the lovely comments. Thanks for those of you who've shared the live stream. We hope the examples and case studies this week have given you some ideas. We've given you also some ideas about things that you might want to check out yourselves in terms of incorporating into your content creation. And thanks, Peter, for giving us a little bit of an insider look here on Live Stream Insiders in terms of what it's like to create that kind of content. I think we could probably justify a whole show in terms of your learnings about that and what kind of things you have to prepare for beforehand. And if people have got questions, please put them in the comments. And perhaps, Peter, that could be a show that you might do in the forthcoming weeks in terms of giving us some things that you think about before you actually go on location when you're doing something like that, because it was a bit unusual even for you to be able to do that. But let's wrap up and tell people how they can find out about what's going on next time.
So a couple of little bits of mop up. Tomorrow I'm going to be live streaming from the BBC Surrey account because we have a body which has been found in the local canal. So police reckon it is suspicious. So that's going to be one of the stories that we're going to be covering. So I shall be down there at the scene doing some pre-recorded and probably live video as well, but to show people the scene. So I'm really interested in perhaps using 360 video tomorrow, so local people can see exactly where the police operation is going on. That's number one. Number two, we've had a couple of people say, what are the contact details for Verifeye Media? So you can contact them on Twitter and also via their website as well. So it is Verifeye Media, VERIF, Verif, and then I, as in EYE, Verifeye Media. So it's at Verifeye Media on Twitter and verifeyemedia.com if you want to be involved with their free live streaming training, and then perhaps put yourself forward to be commissioned to do some live streaming for other news organisations. They act as the middleman, so that sounds pretty good. They act as your agent, as it were. And also, I mentioned one very, very brief thing. It was always going to be brief, but that is the biggest selling newspaper in the UK, which is The Sun newspaper, has done a whole article on how their readers can do live streaming on Facebook. Stuff that you and I know already, but what's really interesting is that a really popular tabloid in the United Kingdom is giving a step-by-step breakdown, bullet points about how people can go live from their mobile phone, which is obviously going to encourage more and more people to do that if they didn't know already. Okay, that is about it. Got a little bit over time, but that 30 minutes, just a bit of a guide. But episode 92 over and done with. Thank you so much indeed for the loan of your eyes and your ears over the last 40 minutes or so. That has been the Live Stream Insiders with me, Peter Stewart, and also my co-host Krishna Day. Thank you so much indeed for watching. Those links will be available in the next couple of hours or so. Do keep the conversation going right here, whether you've watched us live or whether you've watched us on the recorded version of the show. And we'll be back in another 7 days to review the last 7 days, as it will be in around 30 minutes, to keep you up to speed, keep you up to date with everything that's happened in tech and apps and case studies, everything to do with live streaming.